Today we read from the book of Ruth, chapter 2. You have a long read today, but I hope you enjoy the story. It may need a bit of explanation for those who don't know the background. Naomi was a widow who had also lost her 2 adult sons and was left with her 2 daughters-in-law. One returned to her own family, but Ruth stayed with Naomi. And this was particularly surprising because Ruth was from Moab. She was a foreigner, not from Israel. Ruth is seen as an archetype of faithfulness and of sacrificial friendship. The details about gleaning relate to the laws of the Pentateuch, which allowed the poor to pick up grain that was left behind the harvesters, the scraps, the residue, just enough to save them from starvation, hopefully. That was what Ruth did to save herself and her mother-in-law. The landowner, Boaz, no doubt noticing her beauty and making discreet inquiries, was impressed by her story and gave orders for his workers to leave extra grain behind for her and share their water with her. That was extraordinary generosity and charity. Meanwhile, it emerged that Boaz was distantly related to Naomi and therefore had a claim on Ruth. He met with another person with a possible claim, and it was agreed that Boaz could marry Ruth, thereby making her respectable and providing protection for life. Naomi would have been included in that. So he does marry Ruth, and the icing on the cake is that down the generations, in direct line from Boaz and Ruth, comes David, who became king, and ultimately Jesus, the King of Kings. If you read the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 1, you'll see that Ruth is one of the very few women named in the list. It's surprising that any female names are there. That wasn't the custom at the time. And it's especially curious that Ruth is named as she was from Moab. The other women named are Rahab, the prostitute of Jericho who sheltered the Israelite spies, and Tamar, who conceived a child by her own father-in-law through a trick. Bathsheba, with whom David committed adultery, is alluded to unnamed. Strange, isn't it, that in this family tree, highly schematized and aiming at linking Jesus with David and then back to Abraham, it features these women of perhaps dubious reputation. It certainly contradicts any idea of racial purity. Perhaps it's part of the theme of God's often unexpected providential operations. We have just celebrated New Year, an opportunity for a fresh new start, at least on a personal level. I hope and pray that this new year will bring you joy. If things seem hopeless for you, remember Ruth and Naomi in their plight as unprotected, poverty-stricken women, and how their fortunes were turned so unexpectedly and wonderfully for good by the providence of God working through Ruth's faithfulness. Little did they know what the more distant outcomes would turn out to be. They had a new start in their lives after much grief and struggle. May you too be refreshed in the ways that you need and find meaning and purpose in your life and in your walk with God.